Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Greg and Thomas. I am actually not in this episode. I wasn't able to make the recording date, so it will be led with Thomas. And unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, you won't be able to see Ramona's face, but you do hear her lovely voice. All right, so let's go ahead and get on with the episode.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk with Greg and Thomas. Today, Greg is not with us, unfortunately, but I am here, Thomas. But today I've got a great guest with Ramona. I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher your last name. How do you
It's
pronounce
like Versace, but Massachi.
Massachi? Okay. I apologize. I have a really bad British accent. It's very bad English. So
I think it's lovely.
oh, thank you. So yeah, a little bit different today. Obviously Greg's not here, but we basically me and Ramona spoke before, and we wanted to speak about basically people running for office if you're progressive, and basically Ramona, I wanted you to sort of enlighten the people who listen to this podcast today in terms of what to do if you are planning on running as a progressive, what you basically need in this day and age, and is it even possible to do it? So yeah, please enlighten us.
Well, there are hundreds of progressive Democrats. There are hundreds of Green Party candidates. There are dozens of independent candidates running for office. And the only way they will win, time and time again, it has shown, is if they can inspire local people to knock on doors. They will never be able to raise the amount of money that their challengers are able to raise because they're grassroots candidates. So they're relying on small dollar donations. So maybe they'll raise 200, 300K. That's enough for them to get some literature together to pass out, but that's about it. Maybe like a small staff that they can hire. Nothing grandiose, but if they've already set up a system within their community where they're already known, they've already volunteered, people already trust them, and then they can get those people to help them knock on doors, then they have a chance. Now, sometimes they don't win they never really win their first run. That's extremely rare. But they could win their second run if they follow that, if they follow the path of actually being involved in their community and being known in their community, then people will spend the time to give of their weekends and their evenings to knock on doors.
Right.
The only reason, it was really sad to see, but the only reason a whole bunch of candidates did not win last election cycle was because they had mapped out, they understood this, thank God, and they had mapped out their entire district. They had all the volunteers, they had the time slots, and then COVID happened. And they were not able to pull it off because of COVID. This election cycle, it seems that people, understand to mask, are vaccinated, are a little bit less afraid of getting COVID because they're vaccinated, and they're proceeding to knock on doors again.
Right.
And once they inspire, they just keep inspiring. And it rushes through the whole community because most people don't vote because they have nothing to vote for.
I actually wanted to sort of progress this a little bit more on that particular issue on people not voting, because I think what we're seeing right now, with Democrats, particularly with not even accomplishing the agenda that was put forward during the election. It's really turning a lot of people sort of pessimist towards the whole system. There's a lot of people that I know that I work with just day to day that don't see change in this system, and Democrats are sort of fueling this pessimism, like with this sort of, they're fueling. There's only so many times that you can encourage or persuade people to come out and vote against fear. Like, there's only so many times you can push fear onto people before they just don't care. And they
Because
just,
it's one and the same,
yeah,
right? If
yeah,
you're voting for a corporate candidate, right, or you're voting for a Republican, they both have the same exact agenda, and I don't
right,
blame them.
yeah,
They end up with nothing,
yeah,
except, an infrastructure bill, which is a complete giveaway to corporations,
yeah,
which is exactly what they got. That's all they got.
yeah. And see, that was my point. I think I've said this with Greg before, that really progressives are sort of shooting themselves in the foot here, because they were saying for months that they would not pass the infrastructure bill without Build Back Better passing at the same time. And what we've seen is that not only have they been able to pass the infrastructure bill, but they've been able to tank the Build Back Better program completely. And so I don't really know where the path going forward is. I think, I understand that people coalesced around Biden, but it's seriously damaging. It's seriously damaging long term. It's going to damage a whole lot of people who, we're supposed to be doing damage limitation. I think we need to people, people are obviously fearful of the Trump administration again, but we need to realize that people like Joe Biden, people like Nancy Pelosi, people like Kamala Harris, they are fueling the move towards the far right in the United States. They're fueling this fascism that's coming, and we have to do everything we can to just say no.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
completely.
the far right is out of their minds.
Yeah,
I've talked to them, I've challenged them, and they actually believe, they've been convinced that if you do anything for the public, as far as healthcare or education or childcare, that will cause massive inflation. It will devalue the currency, and you should never, ever do anything for people.
yeah,
And when I challenge them, and I'm like, yeah, but don't you understand the amount of money going towards the military and subsidies and public-private partnerships, the trillions of dollars every year going towards that? How come that doesn't cause inflation?
yeah,
How come it only causes inflation when it comes to actually taking care of the people that live here?
yeah,
And they have nothing to say. They're living like, the conservatives are living in fear of being helped. And for some reason that also translated to conservative Democrats. They're also in fear of helping the people. They think
yeah,
if they help the people, then that will create, a disaster, and inflation will run rampant. And that's just not true. And when I tell them, listen, as long as there's resources to back the investment, then we're fine. And if there aren't resources to back the
yeah,
investment, then we can build the resources to back the investment, right?
yeah, yeah,
And they just don't seem to understand. And so you have, a large portion of the population that are seriously suffering and just need, student loan cancellation, healthcare,
Yeah.
education, housing, uh, after school programs, childcare, and are desperate for it. And then you have another half of the population that is just like, no, die.
Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
they're
And
just
and
like,
the
we don't care about you. Obviously, you can't make it on your own, so you should not exist.
yeah. And the problem with these two sides is you have a far right that we know is completely nuts, like that is completely out to self-sabotage its just own existence, particularly for the vast majority of people who side with this type of politics. But the reality is that Democrats and people like Joe Biden are fueling it. They're fueling it at a time, especially at a time of massive inequality.
I don't think they're fueling it. I think they're part of the far right.
Yeah. Oh no, that's what I'm
Uh,
like my
like they're
like
they're
Biden on any
one.
metric.
Biden
Sorry,
is
sorry.
one. Biden is one with Trump.
Yeah.
There is no differentiation. So if
No.
you vote for people like Biden, you
Yeah.
might as well vote for Trump.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. 100% agree. In any metric, if I was to compare, say, I know Europe, where I'm originally from, Joe Biden would be a conservative in terms if I was to go by UK politics, it'd be a conservative. In fact, I'd argue he would be, amongst people like UKIP and various other far right. In any sane society, he would not be classed as a liberal.
And
But
and Bernie himself would be like a centrist.
yes, he
He's not
would.
even extreme.
Yes, yes. That's what I said to Greg. America's version of socialism is just giving healthcare to people. Well, I'm sorry, but Europe's been doing that for decades now. Nearly across the whole of Europe has been in some form or other providing universal healthcare as a human right. And I think the problem is we keep going through these sort of America keeps going through these stages of we keep moving further and further and further right, because like you said before, people vote out of fear, and if we keep doing it, we keep telling ourselves that people, we have to vote for people like Joe Biden. When before the election, during the primary, I made the case that Joe Biden, on every metric, is, you could argue is worse than Trump on some issues, particularly with student loans, particularly with credit card debt. It's just, this whole thing has been so damaging. But anyway, I'll let you. We're sort of
Drilling,
drifting off topic a little bit here, but
selling the Arctic,
yeah,
completely having zero regard for climate change
yeah,
and disaster, having zero regard for humanity. Um, and then what frustrates me is then you have all of these grassroots candidates, okay? All of these Green Party, independent, progressive Democrats that are running. And then people will box it together and say, oh, well, it's the same thing. What are they going to do? And it's like,
yeah,
wait, but we have like, what do we have, like 5 people, 10 people? What, and there's 540 people there. And,
yeah,
and you want like these 5-10 people to be able to overpower 540 people. It's not gonna happen. You need to have a majority.
yeah,
And even having a majority is so difficult that the only thing that seems to actually make sense is all of these hunger strikes that just started rising up.
yes. I've seen someone who's brutal. So I can't remember his name. I saw one who's on a 100 strike for 40 days now, for voting rights, to get voting rights passed.
And I saw that too.
And the Senate's gone on holiday. They're on holiday. They're gone for Christmas. They're not coming back. So
No.
like that's the level of disdain. Some of these people have.
They
Um,
really don't care about you
no, no,
at
we have,
all.
yeah,
Like they will once, because what's going to happen is the climate is going to become so unpredictable between droughts and flooding and natural disasters that we're going to become food insecure,
yeah,
and they're going to watch you die,
yeah,
and they're going to be okay with watching you
yeah,
die. And so a majority of the population in the next 10 to 20 years is not going to be here anymore.
no,
And I
no,
don't think people understand the gravity of that.
yeah, yeah. I, I,
Um,
I think, sorry, I was going to say that I think with a lot of these issues, it's sort of people don't realize it until it happens, or until it happens to them, and at that point it's too late. Like the damage is like done. Like that's how so right now in my home country, the conservatives are in power, and they're literally trying to reverse the healthcare initiatives that are in place since, since the NHS done. And it is frightening. It's absolutely frightening. And I live here, I know what it's like. But a lot of people back home, they have no idea what's in store for them. And it's but this is but too many people um vote either based on what they think is in their self-interest, or um there's so much propaganda. But if we steer back to the initial conversation, which is about how progressives can win, or get what it takes to get people like that into office, do you see that as a viable solution given the time frame we have with some of these pressing issues?
I mean, it's better than nothing. That's what I'd have to say. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't think it's a viable, like, even though like I fully support so many wonderful grassroots candidates, it's not enough.
no,
How many are going to win? Like,
yeah,
even if it goes really, really well, let's say it goes really well and 20 of them win, you still have 25 to 560, right?
yeah,
And so it's just one thing that we can do. And so, that one thing, with like Extinction, I love Extinction Rebellion. Like, if I didn't have young children that I have to take care of, I'm divorced, so my kids are very much reliant on me.
yeah,
So if I didn't have young children, I love what Extinction Rebellion is doing, and
yeah,
how they're training people to take small groups of people and go and do different, extreme actions where they actually will get arrested.
yeah,
And doing it repeatedly over and over and over again, small groups of people. And so if
yeah,
you have thousands of small groups of people um, doing things that disrupts, traffic, oil, electricity, whatever it is, and they're constantly getting arrested, then it will shake up the middle class, because the middle class in America is still very comfortable.
yeah,
And so you have extreme poverty and despair, and then you have this middle class that is like, listen, I'm still able to pay my mortgage. I'm
yeah,
still able to afford my health care. Um, I'm still able to send my kids to college. I'm sitting pretty.
yeah, yeah. And I actually see that slipping a little bit right now with inflation actually especially gas prices having a massive. But that's a different. I saw. Well, let's see. I saw not only Biden but Kamala Harris made that horrendous comment about. No, it was Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg made that horrendous comment about electric cars. I don't know if you saw that.
What did they
But
say?
they basically Kamala Harris made a statement on Twitter basically saying that she thinks the biggest barrier to people getting an electric car is where the charger's located, right? And then Pete Buttigieg made a comment because he was asked about what do Americans do about high gas prices, and Pete Buttigieg turned around and said, "Well, they should just go buy an electric car." And so that's where we're at. These are the people that supposedly are on the side of everyday Americans, and it's just not true. It's just
No, they're
so
not
out of
on the
touch,
side of
so
any
completely out of
American.
touch. Yeah,
No.
yeah,
And even like electric cars, our technology is not advanced enough
no,
in the sense that lithium, it, when you extract lithium and you purify it, it creates a lot of hazard. And then they take all of that toxicity and then they dump it right back into the earth. And it goes into water
yeah,
and it mixes with our water.
yeah,
And then it kills people.
yeah,
And so how much lithium are we supposed to extract? And we don't even have the technology that would be able to supply batteries that aren't dependent on lithium.
yeah,
So and we're just not there yet.
yeah,
And part of the reason why we're not there yet is because instead of subsidizing billions of dollars to the oil and gas industry, or including subsidizing billions of dollars to the oil and gas industry, subsidize billions of dollars into figuring this out.
yeah, yeah,
And there's absolutely no reason not to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So in that, well, if we try and answer the original question here, I suppose, like I think with everything that's happened, and I see what's happened in my home country also, and I see it. It's we're having this growing move to the far right around the world, with the exception of Latin America. South America is actually
Chile.
doing the complete opposite. Chile today, yeah, I just saw that today, which is great. But America tends to coop countries that do this. So
That's why they're so threatened by China.
yeah,
Because China is helping these countries develop their infrastructure, and they're building high-speed trains in
yeah,
these countries,
yeah,
so that they're able to sell their products to them
yeah,
and get it across the country.
yeah,
And so America's all pissed because they're like, hey, wait, you're not supposed to improve people's lives. You're supposed to coop them and then throw bombs on them and destroy everything that they have until
yeah.
they have nothing. And like then put our own people in like Bolsonaro and destroy the Amazon.
Oh yeah, trust me. I mean, Britain's famous for supporting far right fascists, people like Augusto Pinochet, Chile, Pinochet, wasn't he? I can't remember. Sorry, I probably butchered his last name there, but he was supported by Margaret Thatcher in the UK. So this isn't something new, but yeah, like I mean, what it really comes down to is we're probably going to need a mix of on the ground resistance and also political resistance. And I think that's probably the only way we can really shake things a little bit.
So what I believe is that progressives, all progressives, no matter where they're running or what they're running for, need to be on the same page. They
Yeah,
need to understand how policy works. They need to
yeah,
understand how federal funding works. And so I'm going to start fully dedicating a lot of my time. I already put a team together. So I'm going to start fully dedicating a lot of my time in getting all of these candidates together
right,
so that they can be trained by the policy writers,
yeah,
like Rohan Gray, who wrote Mint the Coin, and how Mint the Coin works and why Mint the Coin works and what they can do. And like Pavlina Chernova, who wrote the Federal Jobs Guarantee,
okay,
and how that works and why
yeah,
it works. And so they're at least, because you have to repeat something 5,000 times,
yeah,
minimum,
yeah,
so that people understand it and it starts sinking in. And
yeah,
if they're not all speaking the same language, if they don't understand the policy and the funding, then they're not going to get anywhere.
No.
And
No.
so I want to build something where these candidates not only understand this, but they also are, they have these policy writers in their back pockets.
Yeah.
So if they want to write a housing policy or any kind of policy, they know who to go to. They know
Right.
where to go. They know and then not only that, the candidates get to know each other even better. And then hopefully, hundreds of them win. And people start waking up and they start dumping the incumbents, because that's
Right.
another strategy that's been going around, dump the incumbents. And people start dumping them and start putting in fresh blood. And I want this fresh blood to be educated and knowledgeable. So at least from that perspective of electoral politics, they have a clue.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And it's we need something, because right now it's I just feel like Democrats, I think this administration particularly has, I mean, previous administrations obviously have it also, but this administration, the blatant just the blatant inaction on promises, like so blatant, um is really going to fuel a far right takeover, because of these severe lack of action in terms of, and even though liberals tend to be very, I don't know, they're comfortable right now because Biden's in office. I am seeing a growing trend of, like, because they want Trump in jail, you know what I mean? Like they're expecting all these things and it just hasn't happened. Even for their lack of like political, like class awareness. They're getting a little bit shaken as well. So I don't know. We need something to combat the trajectory that it's going in, because there is a severe push towards ending democracy, or the illusion of democracy, I suppose I should say, really.
Right. And the liberals are the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the far right is like stupid and misguided. But liberals should know better, and they just don't give a shit.
No.
They don't care. They're just
No.
like, I'm good. I'm good. My shit's good. I mean, too bad for you. I became a doctor. I became a lawyer. I got my MBA. You should have done that too.
Yeah.
They could care less.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this whole, like, the whole system where we take the poor, and then we have extended slavery to prison labor, and that we're okay with this. Yes, let's just keep taking these people and these people's children, and let's keep putting them in prison for the rest of their lives because they are a blight on society. Well, they're a blight on society because you failed them from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in this city. I grew up in Queens. We didn't have after school activities.
Yeah.
We didn't have a sports teams. We
Yeah.
didn't have, like, art classes. We didn't have all the things that, inspire children to learn and grow and become creative. We had nothing.
Yeah.
And so you take a bunch of kids that have absolutely nothing and have no focus, and then you tell them, that, oh, we're you're supposed to go to college, and then even if they make it to college, you put such a huge student debt on them that they can never even afford a home.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, I watched this happen to friends of mine. I watched friends of mine end up in prison because they went one way, or end up with student debt because they went the other way. And
Yeah.
I was watching this and I said, I'm not going to do either of those things. I'm just going to become an artist, and I'm going to hire artists to teach me what I want to learn. And I'm going to, go to all the trade shows. I'm going to, buy other artists' stuff and just sell it to the public and figure it out from there. And so then I was able to avoid all of that.
Yeah.
I was able to buy a home. I was able to, have a business and take care of my kids, as a single mom. Because I thought about it beforehand, because I paused and I watched for a few years, and I said, no, this doesn't seem right.
But it's not even like we brought this up in an earlier episode, me and Greg, and I talked about how the social contract is broken. Like, it's completely broken. I mean, it was broken before, but now it's like stripped apart. Like, they've literally just done away with it completely. The idea of home ownership is just non-existent unless you are at least a millionaire, and for most people. And
Because
it's
the average home is like $500,000
yes,
now.
yeah. I brought up about I talked about my mom, who grew up severely poor in the UK, a very poor family. Used to go to food banks and had to go to the local church just to get food and supplies and stuff. And even someone like my mom was able to put herself through nursing school and still come out of it buying an apartment at the age of like 24, 25. And owning an apartment. But that today, like, if you grow up in the same circumstances today, that is just complete, like, it's just not possible, like, period. And so that's where, before that's where I believe this, like, the idea, if there ever was like this, like, vision of the future for people, is just completely evaporated. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I'm in my 40s. I think I was the last generation that was able to do that in the United States.
Yeah.
And everybody else that's younger than me, that that are activists that I work with, they can't do that. They
Yeah.
could never afford a home. They're renters for the rest of their lives, which means that they have no stability. They don't want to have kids. Why would they want to have kids if they can hardly take care of themselves?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely unfair. It's a disgrace. And yes, we need to vote human beings that aren't monsters, because I think these people are like literally monsters.
Yeah.
We need to vote human beings in, but we also need a lot of ground action,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to convince, most people don't vote. If you can be able to convince the majority of people that don't vote to vote, then we would have a big shift electorally. But only candidates can do that in their district if they know how to run a campaign.
Yeah.
That's not expected from anybody else. If you're running a campaign, you know how to run a campaign, that's what you do. You get people who don't vote to vote.
Yeah.
But outside of that, if they know how to run a good campaign, people need to do a lot of ground action.
Yeah.
And that's going to end them in prison. They're
Yeah.
going to get arrested, and they're going to have to be okay with that. So they have to be either young enough to be okay with that, where they don't have a family reliant on them, or old enough to be okay with that because they've already lived.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you have those two sides of the spectrum that have the ability to rotate in and out of jail
Yeah.
until this gets solved.
Yeah.
And so I think those two strategies working together might take us out of this, but really we only have 2 or 3 years to address this.
Yeah.
And so it's either now or never.
Yeah.
Either run for office, know how to run a campaign, already be an activist so that people actually know you, or go and be willing to rotate in and out of prison,
Yeah.
and then in the next 2 to 3 years, and then
Yeah.
after that it's kind of like we all get to kind of watch it all fall down. And I
Yeah.
think that's the way. It's kind of depressing, but I think that's the way it's going. And I think that, like, children that are in middle school and high school fully understand this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the pandemic sort of accelerated this decline, like this crumble. I don't I legitimately believe that there's like no going, like they're trying to return things to normal. They're trying to get things to
Normal.
go back. Yes, not I say normal. It's not normal. It's just status quo rubbish. But the I see them every day. I mean, this is why a part of the reason why Biden's trying to bring student loans back again as well, trying to say that everything is over and we can just push this back to not, and it's not going back to whatever normal it was before. It wasn't normal before anyway. But I think if there's any hope, I think the pandemic has sort of fueled this, or really opened people's eyes to the fact that they're not as safe as they thought they were. Like, not just like in terms of health, but um like economically, like stability wise. Like, there might have been people that were like just like barely hanging on, or like barely like I can do this. And I think the pandemic has shown that you are not being treated okay. You're not, like, this is none of this is okay. It never was okay. So I hope that's my hope piece for today. I hope people um people, this period is sort of enlightening people a little bit more than it probably would have done before.
Well, I think the pandemic just showed that the federal government doesn't give a damn about you.
No, no,
And so people are fully aware now that,
yeah,
listen, we're on our own. And so that's why that whole movement towards mutual aid came, which is great. But that's a limited amount of money. You're not going to save everyone through mutual aid. Maybe you'll help a few people pay their electricity bills and get some groceries and pay their rent. But if it's not a federally funded program, it's not going to happen for you.
no,
And
no,
and so I think people are starting to now realize that, wait a second, we said fuck electoral politics, but if we say fuck electoral politics, then we really end up with absolutely nothing, because then the federal government isn't doing anything for us, and states and people only have a limited amount of resources and money to be able to help.
yeah, yeah.
There
Well,
is this really great idea that I want to research more, that I heard about several months ago, that Rohan Gray and a few of his friends came up with. And they were talking about taking grants that colleges receive, that universities receive,
mm,
applying for federal grants, and then creating community food gardens.
oh wow,
Because the first thing that we need to do is to become locally food sovereign.
right,
If you
yeah,
can become locally food sovereign, that creates a lot of structure.
yeah,
And you could even create a sort of federal job guarantee through that, figure out what the local area needs, and be able to hire people to do those things, whether it's elderly care, whether it's fixing infrastructure and hiring people, and to do it from that space. But it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Um, but something has to like click because we are out of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think on that note, I think we'll wrap up today's episode. But yeah, I definitely agree that we are definitely out of time, and something needs to give. And I think we need to approach this from multiple angles and just try and, like you said, try and get progressives to work together to just to at least end what's happening right now, or try to push us in the direction that doesn't move us further into this hellscape that we seem to be lurching towards.
I think the most frustrating, last note, I think the most frustrating part for me is all of the research has been done. We know
Yeah.
exactly what we need to get ourselves out of this. We know
Yeah.
how to go about it. We know the steps. And none of those policies are even being looked at in
Yeah.
Congress. They're not even getting floor votes.
Yeah.
And so it's not a lack of knowledge.
No.
We have all the knowledge, we have all the experts, we have all, the resources. We just have zero political will to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Before we leave today, would you like to tell people who are listening a bit about yourself, what you're currently doing, anything to promote?
So you can find me on Twitter at Ramona Massachi. I am doing I'm doing 2 interview platforms. I'm doing one with candidates on MMT podcast with Jeff Epstein.
Yeah.
And I'm doing one with Real Progressives on the Luke Parcher show.
Oh,
And
great.
so what I'm doing with that is I'm finding candidates that are either open to learning or understand MMT. And so we're either contacting them, starting out the interview and being like, wait a second, you don't know what you're talking about yet. Please review either this book or, these white papers. Talk about it with whoever you need to speak about it, ask the questions you need to ask, and then come back onto the show and talk with us about what you've learned. And so I'm doing that with 2 platforms. And then I'm also doing this thing that I talked about, bringing together candidates, and I'm doing that under the Modern Money Network, under Andreas Bernals. And so I'm putting it together and then using his platform because he's already connected with all these policy writers.
Right.
And researchers. And so it's very easy to just, bring them in and be like, here's a safe space where you can talk to candidates that are open. And all of the candidates are open. All of the candidates are excited.
Nice.
And so I'm hoping to bring that together so that the left has legs, we have stability, because we have no stability, we have no legs, we have no foundation. We need a foundation.
Yeah. No, we do. We do. Thank you very much, Ramona. It's a pleasure meeting you and pleasure talking to you. But yeah, this is a fantastic conversation. But yes, that's it for today on Let's Talk with Greg and Thomas. And I hope to see Greg next week. But thank you for tuning in, and bye-bye for now.